Good morning. Today we are on Viewpoint Road in Felixstowe. We're going to get the foot ferry over to Harwich and going to have a wander around Harwich and look at some of the historical points of interest there. Really looking forward to going on the foot ferry and seeing exactly what we can find in Harwich. Just look at this fabulous view. What a beautiful day for it. The sea looks like the mid. It's amazing. I can't wait to embark on this one. I've always wanted to go across on a foot ferry, but I've often missed out because I've waited until October. But today is going to be an exploring trip for me. I'm really looking forward to it. Come and join me.
Life jackets under the wheelhouse and a 65 passenger life raft behind the wheelhouse. In the unlikely event of an emergency, the skipper will blow the horn for 10 seconds and the crew will assist. Parents and guardians, please keep your children close by at all times. Please have your return ticket.
We have landed in historic Harwich, and this is Halfpenny Pier. Built as the Corporation Pier and opened in July 1853. So we're here. Beautiful historic Harwich. Harwich is actually not mentioned in the Domesday Book. So at that time, if anyone lived here, it would have been a very small settlement. The name Harwich is believed to be derived from the old words here meaning whip. So similar connotation in Ipswich, meaning army camp. And here it's because of the Danes camped here in the 9th century. However, there is an entry for Dovercourt. It was a little village with a population of about 120. The inhabitants were peasants who farmed the land around a cluster of wooden huts. So we're here at the lifeboat station, which is right on the quay. By 1111, a chapel existed in Harwich, so there must have been a small number of people living there. Then in the 13th century, the Earl of Norfolk turned the hamlet into a town. And at that time, trade and commerce were increasing in England and many new towns were founded. In 1253, the Earl of Norfolk, Lord of the Manor, started a weekly market in Harwich. In those days, there was very few shops, so if you wished to buy or sell anything, you went to market. Once the market in Harwich was up and running, craftsmen and merchants would go and live in the town. So new streets were laid out and wooden jetties were built for ships. Harwich grew rapidly and in 13, 18, it was given a charter. This is the beautiful Pier Hotel, one of a few buildings here on the quay. And this is a mid-19th century building. It's stuccoed and in the Baroque style. And situated next to that is the very austere town hall, which is now residential apartments. And that was originally built as the Great Eastern Hotel in 1864. And this is a monumental composition in free mixed Italian style. We're going to wander along and have a look at that in greater detail. Unfortunately, the recycling guys are outside, but we'll try and ignore them. Now, the octagonal ticket office that's coming up here on the right, and the connecting booking hall on the edge of the quay, was originally the ticket office for the continental package steamers, and is an elegant and fascinating reminder of the early days of cross-channel travel. It's lovely that they've kept these in such good condition. So here we can see the Great Eastern Hotel. We'll move across the road and have a look at the detail and some of the faces that are in the building. See if we can zoom in on some of this so you can take in the detail in the building. And as promised, the plaque dedicated to St. Peeps. This is truly a beautiful building, so much detail on it. Going to have a wander. More faces in the stonework above. I will try and find out who they are and add that to the video. And the doorway is quite ornate too, with the beautiful lanterns outside. And as you can see, it's now called Quayside Court. And there are a couple of other, sounds like a tour ready to start. And again, Christopher Newport. They have a town crier who you probably heard in the background. This is the dock where the foot ferry comes in, which is a little better than the Felixstowe end where you need to trudge down the beach because they decide where the ferry is going to come in, I guess based on the tides. Going to take a wander. Harwich is like a rabbit warren of little streets, and this is where most of the seafaring men lived. Coming up here to the Alma Inn.
So I would imagine 7 o'clock, something like that.
Look at these beautiful buildings.
Yeah, but they do fill up in the winter. Okay, good call.
It is lovely just to take all of this in and just to wander. We're on St Austin's Lane, mixture again of the old and the new. Some very quaint old cottages. Another pretty street. This is called Market Street. We are going to wander. We are on King's Quay Street and we are going to wander down to the Electric Palace. Now, this is quite a handsome building here, and as the name suggests, it is a bank, or was a bank. Looks very much empty now. We're going to make our way down to the Electric Palace, but I also see that there is a tour guide. And I'm just looking at this beautiful building here. This is Schoolhouse, and it also has a plaque above which is in Latin. Looking at it, it would suggest that it's now private residence. There are some very handsome buildings in this town, and I think it's very underrated and definitely deserves a visit. We are outside the Electric Palace now. The tour has moved on, and this plaque gives you some detail. The theatre is closed, as you would expect at this time of day. If you listen carefully, you can hear the music playing inside. There is a film showing actually, you might be able to see it through the curtain. They're probably previewing. The Electric Palace is one of the oldest purpose-built cinemas to survive, complete with its silent screen, original projection room and ornamental frontage still intact. And you can see up top it says 1911. It was designed by the architect Harold Riley Hooper of Ipswich and opened on the 29th of November 2011. We're going to make our way round to the old fire station, just noticing a plaque here that relates to the Mayflower crew. So it's another interesting plaque. This was the original fire station. At the turn of the century, the fire station was at the rear of the Three Cups Hotel, its equipment being pretty useless at that time, as their trucks would not extinguish a fire as the hoses all leaked, and they had to borrow equipment from the Great Eastern Railway and from the army. Thankfully, the council did act, and they recommended building a new fire station, which ironically was built on the site of a disastrous Parsons fire. It was suggested that a horse-propelled fire engine be purchased and a fire station be built on the vacant land next to the new Electric Palace, where the two cottages had been. This is the rear of the Electric Palace, so you can see it's not a very big theatre, and you can see it's adjoined to the fire station. Following the destruction of some cottages belonging to the corporation, ironically, by a fire in 1911, it was decided that the £942 received from the insurance company to build a new fire station on the site and lease the remainder for the cinema at £30 per annum for 60 years. When the new fire station opened in 1912, it was equipped with the latest horse-propelled steamed fire engine. And until 1915, there were horses hired to pull that engine. The council eventually bought a couple of horses of their own for £50. This lasted until 1925, and then they bought a new Dennis motor fire engine for £960. Along here we can see the old lifeboat museum. Harwich Town Sailing Club right there. And here is the Lifeboat Museum in its glory. Originally probably launched the lifeboats from here. unless this is all ornamental. If we come along here, we can see back over to Felixstowe. How beautiful is this? I see a little nod there to Punch and Judy. I wonder if they still do Punch and Judy shows. That is one of my most fond memories as a kid, watching Punch and Judy. I would definitely come back. We're going to follow the road round, make our way round to the church. It's good to come in these little back streets because you pick up so much more of what's going on. There are some beautiful buildings here. Just ahead of us is Low Lighthouse, which we will go and visit. And I also see the crane, which we also need to take in. Look at this architecture. How fabulous are they? This is Esplanade Court. I realise I'm wandering through the middle of the road, but there's no traffic, so no big problem there. I see the tour ahead of me and I'm just conscious that I don't impinge on their privacy. This is an extension of King's Quay Street, so that goes through again. This building here is Government House. I don't know if it's still a government building or if it's privately owned. I'll have to check it out. Continuing on past Government House. Going to make our way round towards the church, and this is Government Court. So they look like they've been built or extended as part of the original building. This is Wellington House. I am being mindful to look for plaques because they do tell you the history of some of these fabulous buildings. We're on Wellington Road. I'm now turning on to West Street, which is a very wide street. A lot of named properties. Look at What a fabulous building. I can see now why the street was cordoned off, because it looks like there's been a pretty bad house fire down that end. This is St Nicholas, Harwich. What a beautiful grand building it is. Just as a little information, in the years 1808 to 1810, a redoubt was built to protect Harwich from the French, and a lighthouse was built in 1818, and in that year St Nicholas Church was dedicated. Going to wander, retrace our footsteps and go down to High Lighthouse. Today, Harwich retains much of its history, maritime links and its old buildings. Such as the Redoubt Fort, High and Low lighthouses, and the Electric Palace Theatre. I'm going to have a little look at the High Lighthouse. Just noticing this building here says old government stables, and that would have been the back end of Government House. There have been 3 pairs of lighthouses through the ages here. From the original wooden pair, those no longer exist. And then the brick-built ones that still stand in Harwich, to the cast iron ones that stand on the Dovercourt seafront. None of the existing lighthouses were used for navigational purposes now. The brick lighthouse in Harwich was built in 1818 under the supervision of John Rennie Sr. to replace the earlier wooden ones. They belonged to General Rebo, and I noticed we walked past a house that had his name on, so I wonder if he actually lived there. Just noticing another plaque here. General Rebo became very rich by charging a penny a ton white duties on all cargoes carrying into the port. And in 1836, Trinity House acquired the Harwich rights from General Rebo for £31,730. And there was at the time still 12 years and 5 days remaining on his lease. So it was suspected that Rebo had hindsight into the changing course of the channel. The lighthouses became redundant in 1863 for just this reason, and the new cast iron lighthouses were erected at Dovercourt opposite the present tennis courts. We are going to walk across now to Low Lighthouse, and while I'm wandering, I'll just give you a little bit more information. Now, having vested that low lighthouse for 10 shillings, it had a condition that it should be returned to Trinity House, and if that was needed for navigational purposes. Trinity House in fact took it over again in 1970 and converted it into a pilot signal station. In 1974 it reverted to Tendring District Council on completion of the new pilot station at Angel Gate. It became the Maritime Museum of the Harwich Society in 1980. The low lighthouse is 45 feet or 16.5 metres high, and it's a 10-sided tower of brick. And the ground story has that projecting canopy that you can see here to provide public shelter, whereas the high lighthouse is 90 feet or 32.8 metres high, so double the size really, 9-sided tower with a grey gilt brick. Here we have another board which is a nod to Harwich's great naval history. This board actually mentions Captain Fryer. His body was repatriated in July 1999 after he was executed in the First World War for attempting to ram a German U-boat. He was a civilian captain and he tried to avoid capture on 2 occasions to save his ship and those on board. He was later captured and killed, and his body later returned to the country for a state funeral at St Paul's Cathedral in London, before being brought back to Harwich, where people lined the streets here as he was taken to his final resting place at All Saints Church on Main Road in Harwich. We are here at the treadmill crane, which is located on Harwich Green. This is a unique treadwheel crane, and it was built at the shipbuilder's yard in 1667. This crane was operated by 2 men walking inside twin wooden treadwheels. so a bit like a hamster's wheel inside of there. And it was in use until the early years of the 20th century. So it's quite a piece of kit, really, looking at it. I'm so pleased that they didn't get rid of it. It was re-erected here on Harwich Green when the old shipyard was dismantled in 1928. In the 18th century, quieter times returned, but civilian shipbuilding did continue here in Harwich, and fishing was still an important industry. But Harwich was still a busy little port. However, the town did suffer from flooding at intervals. I have just noticed, as I'm wandering around, these handy little notice boards, and they are dotted around. This is number one. If you recall, as we were looking at the old fire station, there was a reference board number 4 relative to the Mayflower. So definitely worth looking at if you're coming here. Maybe, you know, a guide around the town if you don't want to follow a book. So do look out for them. To wander along again along the seafront, or the lovely beach huts. That one's quite colourful. And while I'm walking, I'll just give you a little bit more history. In 1722, the writer Daniel Defoe visited Harwich, and he said it was a town of hurry and business, not much of gaiety and pleasure, yet the inhabitants seem warm in their nests, and some of them are very rich. Defoe was also impressed by Harwich Harbour. He said it was able to receive the biggest ships and the greatest number that ever the world saw together. Also has links to the kobolds of Ipswich, and the advent of brewing at the cliff in Ipswich in 1746 was well documented as well by the vandals who torched it in 2020. Thomas Cobbold was a maltster, and he came from Bury St Edmunds, and he started brewing in Harwich at about 1723. The exact site of his enterprise is not clear, but it was certainly right on the waterfront, possibly King's Quay Street behind the Cups Hotel, or possibly where the Pier Hotel and Quayside Court now stand. When Cobbold started brewing, there was a problem with the quality of the water, which led to the building of a new brewery in Ipswich, which had an abundance of good water that came from holy wells. But what is not so well known is what happened to the Cobbold brewing interests in Harwich thereafter. The founder's son, who's also called Thomas, oversaw the new Ipswich venture, but had many activities in Harwich. He owned a number of inns and was probably supplying Vanguard Fort as well as the Royal Navy ships. Back in the day, seamen had a beer ration of a gallon a day each, so it was a significant market for Cobbold, and it seemed that the water problem was one of quantity as well as quality. Good fresh water was available from inland, but only in limited quantities, and at a price. Thomas saw an opportunity, so he opened a seawater swimming baths. Those baths became known as the Brewers' Baths, and they really flourished because Thomas made so much money he was able to buy his competitors' baths and one of his inns, the Three Cups. Under the terms of his will, the brewery in Ipswich passed entirely to his son John, who was known as Big John, partially on account of his propensity for reproduction. Big John had 22 children. I can only sympathise with his wife. The Harwich brewery was leased to Big John and Charles Cox for 14 years. Thomas was a 3-time mayor of Harwich, and when he retired he built himself a fine house, Holly Lodge, and that stands in Dovercourt overlooking the River Stour, and he died there in 1845. There is apparently an old engraving showing the brewery on the right of St Nicholas's Church, which was built in 1822. This must be the original brewery, as the engraving is dated 1830, 1831. And there is another old engraving captured, and that is captioned as the Cobbold Brewery, Harwich, 1723, but there's no evidence to support the caption. It may well be the Cobbold Brewery, but the date is questionable. And according to the Harwich Society, Anthony Cobbold would be grateful of any information that would support that. Just looking at this, how lovely is this? I see they've cordoned it off. It would be really nice to walk right out there, although I bet it's quite slippery. It's a lovely old breakwater. water. Look at that. It's right out. This is another beautiful view. You can see another one of the lighthouses out there, just off the coast. I do actually have a photograph of that my son took maybe 20 odd years ago. I will include it because it is quite a beautiful photograph. We are just coming round the back side of Harwich Redoubt Fort. So as we get closer and we have more viewpoints, I'll give you a little bit more information. As you can see, it's still quite a hazy day. Not too many people on the beach. I thought there would have been a few more. Just a little information about the redoubt. The redoubt was built between 1808 and 1810 to protect the port of Harwich against the threat of Napoleonic invasion. The redoubt is a circular shape, approximately 200 feet in diameter. It has a central parade ground of 85 feet in diameter. Hoists were used to lift shells from the lower level of the gun emplacements, though it's difficult to imagine it as it is now surrounded by houses. Redoubt Fort, originally armed with 10 24-pounder cannons, after it was remodelled in order to accommodate increasingly heavier guns, as technology had changed, improvements were made to accommodate 68-pounder cannons, an enormous 12-ton rifled muzzle loading gun, and in 1903 received 12-pounder quick-firing guns. And despite the ongoing modernisation, the redoubt never fired a shot in anger. It is also probable that its strategic importance declined towards the end of the 19th century, and that was probably due to the construction of the Beacon Hill Battery, which was just to the south. In the 1920s, the area around Redoubt was bought by the town council. The redoubt itself was just allowed to fall into disrepair. Definitely worth a visit though. I have been in, it's nominal, very much like Landguard Fort and Felixstowe, in that they don't charge very much for you to go in. I note that the redoubt is round the back of the school, and I am mindful not to film with children playing. So I'm going to continue on down into the town a little bit. Just noticed a plaque dedicated to the Dovercourt Spa, which stood on this site and was opened on the 28th of August 1854. And it coincided with the arrival of the railway. Lots of interesting facts. Really have to keep your eyes peeled when you're walking. Sea again, it's like a sheet of glass. I'm so lucky. I would stop, but I cannot bear to sit in the sun. I'm looking for a shady spot. seeing the lighthouses straight ahead. Now there's a sign there to the Redoubt Ancient Monument, which we will double back on. These houses here, I absolutely love them. They're 5-storey. Looks like something's finally being done, although it also looks like people are living in them as well. Now, back in the day, I lived here, and we're talking 20 years ago, and I used to drive into the old town and see these beautiful houses, all looking quite shabby and tatty, and wonder why somebody wouldn't spend some time and money to do them up. And then I heard that the local government were going to invest £1 million. Now, bearing in mind it was 20 years ago, and they were going to redo these. I mean, these are similar to the properties in Belgravia. They are fabulous. It looks like majority have been let out as flats, so they've probably been butchered around on the inside, but they're definitely worthy of some attention. I am now on Marine Parade, which is just running along the seafront, and I spot a hut, so I'm going to take 5 and have a drink of water. We are in Lower Dovercourt at Dovercourt Bay. In 1863, Trinity House erected these 2 cast iron lighthouses on the beach, and they were used until 1917 to guide ships around Landguard Point. The 2 lights aligned indicated the right course. These deep water channels are now marked by buoys. The lighthouses were restored in the 1980s and sometimes known as Dovercourt Range Lights. The lighthouses are 150 yards apart and are leading lights. They worked as a pair, with one light positioned over the other. The vessel was then on the right course. Beautiful lighthouses. As I say, I do have photographs which I will share on the site. This is Franks Road. There are some beautiful properties along Franks Road. I remember it from when I previously lived in Harwich. Absolutely scorching day. I'm glad I'm on the shady side of the street. I see that the Royal is behind a hoarding. I'm hoping that this doesn't mean that another one of our beautiful pub buildings is going. I'm hoping it's being renovated. This is the beautiful All Saints Church, Dovercourt. It is a 14th century medieval church, and it has 19th and 20th century restoration. The church stands on the west side of the parish. The walls are sectarian rubble with dressings of limestone The roofs are tiled. The nave was built in the 12th century. Early in the 14th century, the chancel was rebuilt and the porch was probably added around the same period. I have to apologise, they are doing work in the church grounds. It is a little overgrown, so you can see why. Early in the 14th century, the chancel was rebuilt and a porch was probably added during that period. I'm going to see if the church is open. Most look as though they're open, but the interior doors are closed. The chancel arch was replaced in timber in 1615 and the church has been restored for modern times. The church with two blocked Norman arches. Most of the windows and the font, which apparently used to be a cattle trap. Beautiful looking church, I have to say. I do love these beautiful archway entrances. It's a lovely inscription above the door. This is none other than the house of God, and this is the gate of heaven. How nice is that? The church has a curiously interesting memorial. For the window in the tower with our Lord and the Centurion was given to it by the last German Kaiser in memory of many German soldiers who perished like ours in the ill-fated Walcherian expedition of 1810. And there was a sign just at the entrance there that led to the Walcherian graves, which will be amongst these. We'll continue round. Again, excuse the footing as the graveyard, the churchyard is rather overgrown. It's quite a big churchyard actually. I have been inside the church. There is a playgroup inside, and I won't film inside a church. So to respect their privacy, I left. There is said to be a 15th century brass man in a fur-trimmed gown. A poor box made while men were still talking of the Armada, and a floral cross on a 13th century coffin lid. There's a great rood beam on which stood a crucifix, of which a very queer tale is told. The idol which stood in the doorway is said to have such power that the church door could not be closed and stood open day and night. When one night it was stolen and burned by 3 men, the fire is reputed to have lit up the night sky for one of 10 miles on their way home. Within 6 months, all 3 men were hanged in chains, but of a gruesome end. It's a very pretty church. The Dovercourt Shrine in the 1400s, All Saints Church in Main Road, drew thousands of pilgrims after the wooden cross, or rood, on its rood screen became the shrine. It acquired a miraculous reputation and is said to have spoken on some occasions. Not bad for being built out of rubble. I'm going to leave through the wooden arch. I have taken a couple of interior photographs, which I will include on the video. Just turn around and have a look back at the church, and this is where we will conclude our Harwich walk today. It's a shame we couldn't get into Harwich Redoubt. I will include some information about the fort on the video. As we make our way along Main Road, just noticing this beautiful school in the distance. This is Mayflower Primary School. Right, here is Bobbitt's Hole. It's a nature reserve and it's all managed by the Harwich Society, so it's all volunteer. How absolutely fabulous is this? And just here is the Tower Hotel. Just down the end of the road here, you can see the old Dovercourt railway station, which looks like it's all boarded up, which is a shame. I do love the old station buildings. Just across the road there, I've noticed one of my favourite things, which is a bandstand. I'm really hoping that the Salvation Army play here on Sundays. This is the old Harwich police station on Main Road. The importance of Harwich had changed significantly with the arrival of the railway station in 1854, and later in 1883 when Parkston Quay was opened. Probably it was the significance of the town to travellers to increase the population, which prompted the need to build such a substantial new police station. This police station is now no longer open to the public. I think the building is still open. There's probably still police officers in there. I hope they don't think I'm doing something suspicious, because I'm not. It houses prison cells. I'll try and include some photographs on the film. A detention room, 4 prisoner cells, and they were constructed to very strict security guidelines. There was actually a magistrates court at the south end of the building, but this was demolished after being relocated within the Harwich Town Hall, and that complex is on the quay. But a beautiful old building, no doubt. Here at the Redoubt Fort, it has been cordoned off since I was last here, so unfortunately I won't be able to do much filming as I don't have time to go in, but definitely worth a visit. I will post some pictures and videos on the site. We have done the full circle of Harwich, and it's a scorcher here today. I'm coming back up to the lighthouse. It's unfortunate that I just ran out of time, but as I came over on the ferry, I have to be back for a specific time. But that doesn't mean to say I won't include some good information. As we're walking down here, we're coming to the opening of historic Harwich, and I'm going to hone in now on the sign. This is the welcome sign that people see when they drive in. And you can see the church and the high lighthouse in the distance as we're going to make our way back towards Halfpenny Pier. Lovely little pond here for feeding the ducks. Just noticing again another station building. This one is still open. I don't think there's a ticket office there at all, but another beautiful old station building. I am staying very much on the shady side of the street on the walk back. It's just too hot today. Temperatures reaching 32. Far too hot for me. But certainly had a fabulous walk, so I certainly can't complain. Seen lots of Harwich. May come out and do a part 2 at some point, just to pick up on some of the architecture and some of the things I may have missed. Just noticing another plaque across the road. This is Bridewell House. Apparently a house of correction. So just coming back so you can see it better. Now private residence, of course. Across the road here, the old British flag pub. Look at these gorgeous houses. Again, a mix of the old and the new. I notice along here a little nod to Samuel Pepys, so we'll have a look at that as we go by. So that's the Samuel Pepys wine bar and restaurant and hotel car park, just there. And that's on Custom House Lane. And these are the old custom houses. And across the road here, Trinity House. That's where they control everything that goes on at the docks in Harwich. Just noticing this fabulous old contraption. Probably not in use anymore. It probably played a significant part in whatever it was used for. And we are going to have a look at this. And we're also going to have a look at Master Christopher Jones' house. This is the Alma Inn, an inn of significance. I'm going to cross over, and this is the home of Captain Christopher Jones, who was the master of the Mayflower. The board here outlines the Alma, which was once a merchant's house owned by Captain Twit. It also shows Master Christopher Jones' house, and there is a brief history here. So I'm ending my walk here on Halfpenny Pier, just waiting for the ferry to go back over to Felixstowe. I hope you've enjoyed this walk. If you have, give it a like. If you want to see more videos, different towns and places, please subscribe, hit the bell, that way you'll get notified anytime these are posted. And I would just like to say a big shout out to the Harwich Society for all the information that I was able to research in order to do this walk. And also I'll post the Suffolk County Council circular walk if I can find it on the website.